recently I've been coming to think of practice in terms of the distinction between formal practice and what I call life practice or practice in life. So each day, formal practice, what characterizes formal practice is that a period of formal practice lasts at least 10 minutes, so there's a sort of duration aspect, and all your attention is going into maintaining the technique. That makes it formal practice. There are two basic kinds of formal practice. Practice in stillness, where you're not moving much, and practice in motion, where you are moving. You could be walking, you could be exercising, and so forth. So I would encourage a person who wants to be successful with this path to do a little bit, a minimum of formal practice in stillness and formal practice in motion each day. What's a minimum? 10 minutes. Now that's minimum. You might not, that might sound like not very much, but you'd be surprised how much resistance a person might have to doing that. It's not a time thing. Anybody has 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there to do formal practice. It's not a time thing. Then what is it? Well, you might say that the ordinary coping mechanism, the normal coping mechanism that people have for dealing with life could be characterized as tighten up and turn away. The new coping mechanism of this practice is the diametric opposite of that. It's open up and turn towards. Now, you could think of the old coping mechanism as sort of being like how you've been getting air. It sort of works, okay? But not really. So if you start to challenge that coping mechanism by forcing yourself to have periods of open up and turn towards, at some point it might seem to your conditioning that you're like being asphyxiated. You got to get a breath of air. In this case, a breath of air is a hit of unconsciousness. The practice is, it's like your oxygen is being taken away, okay? Your former source of nutrition is being taken away. You're starving to death. You're flailing. And the only way to get nurtured or to get oxygen is to start to go completely unconscious again for long periods of time. And formal practice won't allow you to go completely unconscious for long periods of time. So it seems like you're starving to death or you're being asphyxiated. And that resistance then comes up. And it's not a time thing. It's this other mechanism. So what to do in that case? Well, recycle the reaction, get interested in deconstructing the resistance. So in terms of formal practice, 10 minutes of stillness, 10 minutes of motion most days. Practice in life, I've been dividing into what I call microheads and then background practice. So microhead is short, and it's happening during ordinary life. And you at the end of the day, you can say exactly how many of them you did, how long they lasted, and when they took place. And that's a way of tracking the extent to which you are stopping on a dime, starting on a dime. Stop on a dime means that you suspend your investment with the content of in and out. You suspend your investment with the pull of past and future. And you establish an investment, 30 seconds here, 3 minutes there, with maintaining a technique. What technique? Could be any technique. So what's a technique? Name a technique. Herein. Okay. Herein was the first one. Here rest. Here rest. There's not going to be much herein. I'm doing the technique, okay? After a while, there might be some herein. But I was just showing you I could start on a dime. We go a little broader. See out, gone. Feel in, gone. Feel rest, see rest. See out, gone. See out, gone. Feel in, gone. See rest, see flow, see flow. Okay. No hesitation. No, well, I'm going to sit here and count my breath for 10 minutes and then I'm going to be settled enough to know what's going on. No, that is not starting on a dime. 10 minutes, even 10 seconds. 10 seconds is too long. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a gap, and it's not long. A couple seconds, maybe. And after that, the terrorists are in the cockpit, running the show. Emotional hijack, amygdala hijack. So we need to train ourselves to stop on a dime, start on a dime. Stop on a dime doesn't necessarily mean that you stop moving around. It means that you instantaneously suspend involvement with the content of in and out. And you are involved with the technique. But it doesn't have to be long. It can be while you're walking around, even talking to people and so forth. So that's the micro hit. It can be any technique you want. The places where you would tend to do micro hits during the day are dead times, when you're waiting in line or you're in a meeting and this vacuous conversations are going on that you don't really need all your CPU to, sort of look like you're paying attention. So it's sort of like the dead times. The dead times become the magic times. You're waiting for your system to reboot. Okay. I had this idea once to create a Dharma virus that it would cause people's computers to suspend operation until they had done 30 seconds of a technique.
They have that on a Mac. It's called the beach ball of death.
The beach ball of death?
The whirling ball when it's having a hard time. That for me is mine.
Yeah, right. So these are those the sort of dead times. Then there's the times just before and just after what you think is going to be a stressful event. You can have a stress rehearsal. You know what a dress rehearsal is? Stress rehearsal. It's like, I have one student that basically his entire life is telephone calls. And and most of the calls are telling passionate and powerful people no. And so these are sometimes difficult calls to make. So he can use focus in now. I taught him focus in, just 30 seconds, okay? He just prepares himself, watches the resistance, it's, oh my God, I'm calling so-and-so, and I'm telling them news they don't want to hear. And then he could just make the call, and if there's any after whatever, another 30 seconds, clears it, ready to move on. Before and after stressful things, microheads. Now the beauty of the concept of microhit is you can check in on your own practice in a very tangible way. There's no BS, okay? Because how many did you do? When did you do them? What was the technique? For how long did they last? That will tell you how many times during the day you are severing the trammels of time. Okay, then what do I mean by background practice or having a background technique going? Well, a lot of people report something like this. It's like, well, I don't go completely unconscious, but I'm not putting a lot of intention in having a technique going. But it's sort of going in the background while I'm going about life activities. And some people are able to have that going much of the day. It's not sharp, there's no mental labels or anything, or maybe not much of that, but it's sort of going in the background, as opposed to just the way I used to be, where I would just completely be lost and unconscious and driven, and so forth. So that kind of thing may or may not come naturally to you. If it does, it's just something to know about. It's a component of practice. If it doesn't come naturally for you, that's okay. But the one thing everyone can do, because it's so well defined and so crisp, is the microhits. Like I say, okay, if you're serious about this practice, you're going to have a half dozen or so microhits every day. And the less you feel like stopping on a dime, the more powerful doing so is going to be. When you least want to stop on a dime, when you're most caught up in the bondage of past and future, inside and outside, is when it's going to be most powerful to stop on a dime. You can use spoken labels to ensure quality, because it's not going to be quantity, right? It's going to be short. If your life situation allows for it. For me, often the stop on a dime feels like I'm going to die. It feels like I'm being marched off to a firing squad or something. And that's good. That means I'm doing it right. That means I really am going toe to toe with the forces of the somethingness of self and world. That gives you potentially 4 elements. Formal practice, practice in life. Formal practice, you have stillness, motion. Practice in life, you have microheads, background practice. And with regards to the formal practice, for practice in stillness, 2 accelerators, trigger practice and duration training. For practice in motion, the challenge sequence. It's all described in great detail in the reading we sent you. If you line up these elements, if you at least occasionally do the accelerators, push the envelope of the length of a sit at least occasionally, under the parameters described, occasionally explore systematically triggering hot and cold buttons. Try to do not just practice in stillness and not just walking meditation, but Can I do focus in while I'm washing the dishes? Okay, how deep can I get with focus in while I'm washing the dishes? Focus out on the way to work, etc., etc. So you give yourself the motion challenge sequence at least occasionally. So those would be the ducks that you would want to line up for day-to-day practice. If you line up those ducks for day-to-day practice, what else is left? Well, at least once a year do the equivalent of a 1-week retreat. That's absolute minimum. When I say the equivalent, not everyone in the world can get away for 7 days or 10 days to do a residential retreat. In fact, most people can't. But there are ways of doing the equivalent. For one thing, the home practice program, which we created, which almost anyone can do as long as you speak English, and you can get cheap long distance, or you have internet with Skype, then you can have a retreat practice. You just have to sort of amortize it over the years, spread it out. But a 4-hour or 8-hour program, if you did several of those, many of those over a year, that sort of will serve as your retreat practice. During retreats, as you see, you build up a certain momentum. Then you go back to your daily regimen, and instead of that being a peak experience, it may go down a bit, but it becomes a stable plateau. You now grow gradually with your daily elements, and then go do your next retreat. And then as you look over the big picture of the years and decades of practice, what you'll see is, as a general trend, the retreats take you to a new level. The daily practice backs it up with more modest growth. And so you have this sort of stepwise growth curve. And if you look at the overall envelope of the curve, at some point it becomes evident that it is in fact exponential. When does the break point in this exponential curve come? The break point means when it goes from looking modest and linear to, oh my God, this is really taking off. That's the point at which the derivative starts to go infinite. The break point occurs when you start to get the immediate taste of purification. As soon as you bring equanimity to an experience, you don't have to wait. You just bring the equanimity to it, and you sense that sources of unhappiness are breaking up. You can actually taste it happening. I can't put it into words, okay? It's the Vishuddhi rasa. I made up a word in Sanskrit. This word should exist in Sanskrit. Now it does. Vishuddhi means purification. Rasa means taste. There's a taste. And it's impossible to put into words, but once the spiritual palate matures so that you can taste it, that's the break point. Because now you're rewarded. Now you're dealing with operant conditioning, Skinnerian conditioning. It's a positive feedback loop. It's just classic math. The taste of purification, it can't be put into words, but as I say, its acquisition marks the transition to a mature spiritual palate. There are tastes that kids just don't understand. Why would anyone drink coffee? Most kids can't understand spicy foods either, I think. It's like, why do adults put this in their mouth? It's bitter. It hurts. There's not a taste called spice. Do you know what spice is? Spice is pure pain. It's the raw nerves. It's the same nerves that give you a pain signal are what are stimulated by capsaicin. In fact, that's a way of inducing lab pain. But anyway, that's so. Why would anybody like something that hurts in their mouth? Why would anybody like anything that's bitter? Most kids cannot understand why adults eat this kind of stuff. But the palate changes. So there's a taste that comes about when a person experiences pleasure or pain with equanimity. And the taste is identical. Doesn't matter whether it's with physical pain, physical pleasure, or emotional pleasure. There's a knowing that because of the way I'm greeting this in this moment, the poison and pain from previous moments is being wiped away, and every moment of the future will be marginally less suffering and more fulfilling. It's a kind of knowing of that. When that reward flavor, the taste of purification, which is just the taste of equanimity or the effect of equanimity, when that comes on, that's when the growth curve goes like this. Because now the preoccupation with feeling good is starting to go away. You've got another kind of feel good that's not the old kind of feel good, okay? It's just its own thing. And it's available on demand. So either you feel good intrinsically, or you don't feel good and you have equanimity and you feel good. So now it just takes off. That's when it goes like that. So if you can get these elements in place, then you'll be in good shape. The day-to-day rhythm, formal practice, practice in life, stillness, motion, microhits, background practice, accelerators, at least occasionally. You have that day-to-day. You have retreats. If you're fortunate enough to do residential retreats, great. But some intensive form of practice that's more than just a long sit. What else do you need? Well, at least occasionally touch base with someone who's competent to guide the big picture of your practice. That's a very specific job. You can have many teachers, but you need to have at least one person that knows how to guide people through the entire range of classical experiences that this practice is meant to can potentially bring about. So you touch base with that person once, twice a year to talk about the big picture of your practice.